They briefed us quickly, told us it was a straightforward recovery mission. A U.S. Army patrol had gone missing near Kandahar in the mountains. Their last transmission had been static-ridden, panicked, breaking up with a series of garbled sounds before cutting off entirely. When they didn't check in, no one panicked at first. Radios go dead all the time in that terrain. But after several hours with no contact, command got concerned. By the end of the day, they dispatched our team to find them, bring back any survivors if there were any. Our team was small and highly trained, handpicked from the U.S. Army Rangers. I'd been in Afghanistan for a while by then and had seen some things, but this? Nothing could have prepared me. We were dropped about 10 miles out from the patrol's last known coordinates and told to move fast, but quiet. Not unusual, but something about the way the orders were delivered felt different, like they wanted us to stay really quiet. We trekked up into the mountains, weaving through narrow passes and rock-strewn trails in dead silence. Days passed with barely a word. It wasn't just protocol. We all felt it, that pressure in the air, something dark and heavy that seemed to stick to the rocks themselves. As we climbed higher, it grew colder, the wind cutting sharper, carrying a strange smell. About 4 days in, we found signs of the patrol. A radio, cracked and useless, lay half buried in the dirt. Nearby, a boot, empty but stained dark. And scattered on the rocks, we found bullets, clips, fragments of gear, like someone had just, dropped them while running. But there was no sign of any bodies, no signs of an ambush either. Just abandoned pieces of a squad scattered along the trail like breadcrumbs. Our chief, an older guy who'd seen more than he'd ever talk about, signaled for us to close ranks, and we moved on, tense and silent, hugging the cliff edges and keeping low. About half a mile up the trail, we saw it. A cave mouth, shadowed and yawning open like some kind of ancient wound in the rock. Chief held up his hand, stopping us. "Keep your eyes sharp. Something's not right," he muttered, almost too low to hear. The air near the cave felt different, heavier. That smell from earlier, now stronger. Like rotting meat, but with a metallic tang to it, a mix of burnt hair and blood. It seeped into my nose, clawing at my senses and triggering some deep primal alarm. We crept forward, barely breathing, weapons raised, every nerve in my body screaming to turn back. But we couldn't. We had our orders, and besides, curiosity gnawed at me. What could have happened to a whole squad? Then as we stepped inside the cave, I caught the flickering of a firelight ahead. As we rounded the bend, what I saw was something I'll never shake. It's etched into my mind like a scar. It was massive. Hunched over a fire sat a figure that defied everything I'd ever seen or imagined. It was a man, and yet not a man. I'd guess it was at least 14 feet tall if it stood. Broad and hulking, its skin was dark and rough, weathered like old leather, stretched taut over massive muscles that rippled even as it sat still. It wore what looked like an animal pelt, some massive hide thrown over its shoulders like a cape, and it reeked of smoke and decay. The creature was eating. It held an entire goat, charred black from the fire, in its enormous hands, and was tearing chunks off with teeth that gleamed dully in the firelight, stained from its feast. And then, as if sensing us, it stopped and turned. That's when I saw its hands, 6 fingers on each, thick, knobby fingers with cracked claw-like nails. Each finger was as thick as my wrist. The giant's face was something between human and animal. Its eyes glowed a faint, sinister red in the shadows, locking onto us with a cold intelligence that sent a chill through me. There was no soul in those eyes, no mercy, just a slow, dawning understanding that we were there. Our chief tried to gesture for us to back up, barely lifting his hand, but it was already too late. With a guttural growl that reverberated through the cave, the giant grabbed a spear leaning against the wall, a massive, sharpened trunk of wood, easily 12 feet long. Before I could even blink, it hurled the spear. The spear struck Chief with a sickening sound, slamming him against the cave wall. It tore through his chest with a force that defied belief, pinning him like a rag doll, blood splattering across the rocks. Chief was dead in an instant. I didn't even hear him scream. The rest of us reacted purely on instinct. I think we all knew we were probably next. Every one of us opened fire, unleashing a hail of bullets that lit up the cave in bursts of red and orange. The noise was deafening, gunfire reverberating off the cave walls as we emptied our mags into the thing. The giant staggered, blood spraying from wounds that would have dropped any creature I'd ever known. It roared, stumbling backward, but still it came toward us. It didn't move like it was injured, only angered. Like each bullet was just a mosquito bite to it, pushing it further into some kind of rage. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the giant's movement slowed, and it crashed to the ground with a thunderous impact that shook the cave. Its eyes dimmed, the red glow fading into dull embers before they went dark. We stood there, panting, our hands shaking, the smell of blood and gunpowder thick in the air. Chief was gone, his body still pinned to the wall. None of us could look at him. None of us wanted to acknowledge what we'd just seen. But the horror wasn't over yet. As we checked the cave, we found the remains of the missing patrol scattered about, shredded, half-eaten, their bones stripped clean. There were no survivors, no chance of anything left to bring back but the memory of what we'd seen. Once we called for extraction, the Blackhawks arrived fast. We loaded Chief's body with quiet reverence, along with the body of the giant. It took all of us to lift it onto the chopper, and even then, I felt like we were moving something that was wrong, something that shouldn't be. The flight back was silent. None of us spoke, not a single word. I think we were all trying to make sense of what we'd seen, but deep down, we knew there was no sense to be made. Back at base, we turned over the giant's body to Command, who quickly whisked it away. I heard whispers that it was taken to a remote facility, examined, and then nothing. It vanished, just like the story itself. Command told us to stay quiet, to forget. They even implied we might face consequences if we spoke out. The Giant of Kandahar was to remain a ghost, an unspoken nightmare. But I can't forget. Even now, years later, I wake up some nights, drenched in sweat, hearing that low, echoing growl, seeing Chief's body pinned against the wall. Sometimes I think about the giant's eyes, that cold intelligence that looked at me and knew I was there. There's a part of me that wonders if it was truly dead, or if creatures like that can even die in the way we understand. Whatever it wasn't just an animal or some unknown beast. It was something ancient, something wrong, something beyond our world, and I'll carry that knowledge with me until my dying day.